Okay, see if you can solve my riddle. What takes hours to put on and take off, makes you blind and deaf, and unable to drink water unless it's through your eye socket? If you guessed superhero costumes, then you read the title of this video, and are also correct. Whether they're too heavy, too revealing, keep you from turning your head, or literally blind you, one thing remains constant. It's a pain in the ass to have to go pee. When you think of Spider-Man, you don't really think uncomfortable costume. Just ask Christian Bale, Val Kilmer, Ben Affleck, and George Clooney if you want a really uncomfortable slab of rubber attached to your body. But according to Tom Holland, the Spidey costume wasn't the greatest thing comfort-wise. He told Shortlist that the only thing he wears under the costume is a thong. Hey, me too. So he's got to completely undress whenever he uses the bathroom. Also, the Spidey head doesn't have a mouth, so he would get perpetually dehydrated.
The eyes pop out. And there used to be these fans. I remember them bragging about they added in these fans that you could click and it would supposedly cool me down. They worked once. And after that, I just have these hot batteries in my helmet. But there's a hole underneath the eye socket where we used to be able to feed a tube down.
Gross. He also had to wear an egg-shaped helmet underneath the costume, which would hamper his vision. At one time, he was filming with a stunt double wearing a massive gauntlet, and Tom didn't see that he was about to get thwopped.
So when you do fight scenes, it's kind of like a dance routine. Like if I was gonna punch you in the face, you would vocalize it as well. You'd be like, rah, on the sort of like, rah, of the punch. That's when you would slip it.
Right.
And in the Spider-Man mask, you can't, like, I probably couldn't see you right now.
Right,
in the mask.
okay.
You can't really see sort of 6 feet away from you.
Yeah.
For some reason, the stunt double just forgot to make the noise. So I was just sort of standing there. And then just took it, and he has this big metal sort of gauntlet on, and just took a like right hand right across the side of the head. And everyone was like, cut.
But Tom is incredibly humble about all of it, saying, you have to remind yourself of the long list of actors that would love to be in that suit, and you just go, you know what? It. I'm the luckiest kid alive. Turns out there are big advantages to appearing in 10 movies in one of the most successful film franchises in history. Namely, they make your costume easier to wear each time. At least that's what Robert Downey Jr. said of his Iron Man costume. In the original Iron Man, the studio wanted to use as little CGI as possible, which I totally support. But what Tony Stark wants, Tony Stark gets. And using a full-on practical suit had a lot of practical problems.
Initially, everything was really there. They wanted to spend as little as they could on CG replacement. So I remember this helmet went on and like there'd be a shot and I'd be in this whole suit and they say, all right, Robert, it's like you landed on the roof. So when we say action, just go like that, like you just landed and then start moving forward. So I put this helmet on and it slammed closed and I couldn't see anything. And then these LED lights went on and it was like Manchurian Candidate. Like I was absolutely blinded. By the time we were doing the last Avengers, they'd just be like, hey, Robert, would you mind putting on that helmet? No? Yes? No. Put 2 dots here and then you can paint it in later.
Yeah. Lucky for Downey Jr., he hasn't worn a practical suit in years. Mark Chu, who worked on the Iron Man films, says that the suit is really uncomfortable and pinchy, and whenever you see Iron Man in his armor, it's CG or a stuntman. After the first film, Robert Downey Jr. knew he did not have to wear as much of the suit, and that would make him a lot more comfortable. So instead of donning full armor, he sometimes wears a partial version of the suit called the football suit. It looks like maybe he should have kept better tabs on the actual practical suit, as it was stolen in 2018. The costume is valued at $325,000 and vanished from a prop storage warehouse. Probably check Robert Downey Jr.'s basement, as he almost certainly stole it himself, so he'd never have to wear it again. The suit, as far as I can Google, has never been found. You'd have to be insane to enjoy wearing some of these costumes. So it makes sense that Harley Quinn's costume was hated by her real-life actress counterpart, Margot Robbie. But not for reasons you might think, like ability to move, long hours applying makeup, or temporary blindness. No, Margot Robbie hated it because, well, all her badonk was badonkin'. And everyone could see. As Margot, no, I don't like wearing that. I'm eating burgers at lunchtime, and then you go do a scene where you're hosed down and soaking wet in a white t-shirt. It's so clingy and you're self-conscious about it. Joker's girlfriend's costume has had quite the journey from full-body red and black court jester jumpsuit to hot pants, and one wonders if Margot would have enjoyed that more. At least she could eat all the burgers she wanted. Arkham Asylum updated Quinn's look with a sexier style and sharper lines. Also, the Windows logo? The new 52 DC Comics series saw Harley don several different costumes. She's looking more athletic and less cute, skewing more realistic, which leads us to the Harley we know and love today, brought forth in the Suicide Squad. In addition to the sexy hot pants and bomber jacket, they also introduced blue into the color palette for the first time. Wait a second. Bomber? Bomb Pop! Holy crap, did they use bomb pops to influence her look? I'm gonna go with yes, because now that I saw it, I can't unsee it. Batman wishes he was Iron Man. Not because Iron Man is better, but because Iron Man's suit can be CGI'd onto Robert Downey Jr. Not so for one of the many actors who have played Batman. Christian Bale is the longest running Batman, clocking in at 3 films total, and his costume got progressively more manageable as the films progressed. In an interview with ComingSoon.net, he talked about the differences between the Batsuit in Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. It was heavier than the original, but just so much more motion. I could breathe properly inside of it. It didn't squeeze my head like a vice throughout, so I had to act the rage and anger this time around. It's much more advanced suit than the original one. At first I was fighting against the suit to do all the fight sequences. This one was actually compatible with the Kesey fighting method. I could move my head. Bale was asked what piece of advice he would give Ben Affleck when he newly took on the Batsuit, and he had some choice words. The only thing I said to him was make sure to be able to take a piss without having anyone help him, because it's a bit humiliating. You have to have someone help you out of the costume in order to be able to do that. But Bale isn't the only Batman with complaints about the Batsuit. Val Kilmer, who played the Caped Crusader in 1995's Batman Forever, described it as a wetsuit that's much tighter than anyone would actually wear in a C2E2 panel in 2012.
When you wear this suit, something like 45 pounds, it takes an hour to get dressed, and you can't do it by yourself. Then you can't hear because there's really no holes in it. You can't turn your head. You can't go to the bathroom by yourself. You fall over actually quite easily. And these things are always on your mind because when you have to say to someone, I have to go to the bathroom. It's weird.
Meanwhile, another Batman, George Clooney, complained less about the comfort and more about the nipples. Well, I wasn't thrilled with the nipples in the Batsuit. Batman was just constantly cold, I guess. Oh, Joel Schumacher, showing nipples and butts at the beginning of a kid's movie. When it comes to costumes, there are really 2 far ends of the spectrum, and this one is the opposite extreme of Batman. Body paint. Some actors hate how heavy their costumes are, but a costume so light it's literally painted on also has its downsides. Jennifer Lawrence starred as Mystique in the X-Men reboot X-Men First Class and did a damn good job as the morally ambiguous, misunderstood girl with a physically ambiguous, misunderstood shape. And the problems aren't in performance, it's in application. The body paint for Mystique took a mind-numbing 7 hours to apply, but it was worth it as Mystique's true form looked spectacular on screen, and the 7 ladies who applied it used several shades of blue and airbrushes to get a painted marble quality. Unfortunately, J-Law had to stand during the whole application process.
I thought I was just gonna lay down
Could you go
for like 6 hours and just like go to sleep while this is happening.
Yeah.
I didn't realize I too was gonna have to. All airbrushed. It's the worst when it's going on, but it looks really cool. It makes it look like 3D marble.
It takes 6 girls to paint the full body, and it takes about 7 hours to do that process.
It's like a sleepover, except I'm naked and being painted.
And acting while technically naked also has its downsides.
At first, it was awful because you feel claustrophobic in your own body and your own skin because you have an itch and you can't scratch it.
Luckily for her, the makeup process got more and more bearable as the movies progressed. In Days of Future Past, the application time cut down to 3 hours, and for future X-Men movies, she was able to wear a bodysuit instead of paint.
After all of this, it's like, are you kidding? I'm not taking this off.
Can someone make a horror movie with Jennifer Lawrence in makeup for Mystique as the monster? If you don't, I will. Can't talk Mystique without mentioning the original Rebecca Romijn, who played Mystique in the original X-Men trilogy.
I had to sit through 7 to 8 hours of makeup every day. It was like 2/3 of my body covered in prosthetics and the rest was all airbrushed. And we were doing night shoots, so it was down in the 30s. Between takes, they kept me warm with hair dryers up my sleeves.
Luckily, she had a better time in the second X-Men movie, as she had Alan Cumming as a fellow blue person to complain with about the whole thing.
It was the most mind-numbing process. I maintain that nobody without modeling experience could have handled it.
That was the seventh circle of hell, the costume. But that was the worst part of it, obviously. That was just physical discomfort.
Michael Chiklis, what's he talking about? The Shield on FX? Nope, he's talking about basically the opposite costume from Mystique and X-Men. Who is it? It's Marvel's heaviest member of the Fantastic Four, The Thing. The Fantastic Four started up in 1961 at Marvel Comics and consisted of Mr. Fantastic, the Invisible Woman, the Human Torch, and the Thing. The foursome was exposed to cosmic radiation which gave them superpowers, and gave Ben Grimm the worst of it, an orange, rocky skin, making his character the grumpiest of the bunch, and Michael Chiklis probably didn't have to act too hard to be grumpy. His rocky suit was all practical effects and no CGI. The makeup effects supervisor on the Fantastic Four said that Chiklis said of the costume, the temperature was like middle of summer Sahara hot, using a heating system similar to what race car drivers wear. Underneath the suit, Chiklis wore a capillary system that pumps cool water around the body. The only problem was that he could only get plugged in between takes. The suit was a latex-based material that took about 4.5 hours to apply to Chiklis' body. Eventually, they got it down to 2 hours. He also had dentures for the thing's teeth that he practiced using by reading his kids' bedtime stories. Aww. Hey, you made it to the end. Here, as a present to you, more of Val Kilmer killing it with the audience, talking about the Batsuit.
You kind of sit in a recliner so your back doesn't kill you, and because you're in constant tension. And then you have a cape, so you know it's really kind of psychedelic. But I realized one day, oh, this is being old. No one listens to you anymore. You can't talk. You can't move really. Like this was falling over. You can't quite get to it in time. You need help going to the bathroom. Someone has to help you get dressed. So it's quite different than it looks.
What a bunch of complainers. See, the Spider-Man costume isn't uncomfortable to wear at all. You know, after I cut off the head and cut little finger holes so I can use my phone. I guess it doesn't really have any pockets. Uh-oh. I think I have to pee. See you next time.